Just a simple signature, Nana, right here. That voice, it was the same syrupy sweet tone my granddaughter Chloe had used since she was a little girl, begging for just 5 more minutes before bedtime. But the young woman leaning over me now wasn't a child. She was 34 years old, and her perfectly manicured hand was firmly pressing down on mine, forcing my gnarled fingers to curl around a cold, metal pen. On my other side, her husband Marcus held my frail arm. His grip wasn't gentle. It was a vice, digging into my paper-thin skin with a pressure that promised bruises, a silent, brutal threat to accompany her honeyed words. We were sitting in the middle of the bustling Oakwood Trust Bank, a perfectly ordinary Thursday afternoon. All around us, people were depositing paychecks, applying for loans, living their normal, oblivious lives just feet away from my quiet public execution. "It's just a temporary administrative transfer, Nana," Chloe cooed, her face arranged into a picture of loving concern for anyone who might glance our way. "It's to help streamline your accounts, make things easier for you." But I had glimpsed the documents. I knew the devastating truth. This wasn't a simple transfer. This was everything. The last $48,000 of my life savings, the final fragile remains of the security I'd built with my beloved husband, Arthur, over 50 years of marriage. The money that was supposed to be my shield against a lonely, uncertain future after a sudden stroke took him from me 2 years ago. The bank's chilled, recycled air hummed from a vent above, but a hot, suffocating wave of pure panic was rising in my chest. The harsh fluorescent lights made my old eyes water. Every distant click-clack of a keyboard, every whir of the printer, felt like a tiny, sharp needle jabbing into my soul. Marcus leaned in close, his breath a foul cocktail of mint and stale coffee ghosting past my ear. "Come on, Eleanor," he whispered, the words a sharp, intimate danger. "Don't be difficult now. Think of Leo. Think of everything we do for you." The irony was a physical burning acid in my throat. Everything they did for me? I was the one who mortgaged my small cottage to pay for Chloe's design school. I was the one who liquidated Arthur's precious bond portfolio for the down payment on their luxury condo. I was the one who wrote a check for $30,000 when Marcus's business venture failed, money that vanished into thin air, never to be mentioned again. And now, here they were, my own family, not just picking my bones clean, but trying to grind them into dust for one last desperate meal. My hands, mottled with age and trembling with a mixture of fear and rage, made the pen skitter nervously over the stark, terrifyingly white paper. The blue ink of the ballpoint looked so dark, so permanent. One signature, one shaky scribble of a name I'd written 1,000 times, Eleanor Vance, and it would all be over. I would be left with nothing but a hollow bank account and the echoing silence of a house filled with ghosts. Chloe leaned even closer, the scent of her expensive jasmine perfume, a birthday gift I'd generously paid for, of course, clashing violently with the sour smell of my own terror. "Nana, you have to trust me. It's for your own protection. A woman your age shouldn't be burdened with managing such a large sum." Her words were like poisoned candy, each one meticulously designed to weaken, to belittle, to conquer what was left of my will. My eyes, wide with a trapped animal fear, darted around the room, desperately searching for a savior, a witness, anyone. The young bank teller with the bright blue glasses was laughing with a customer. An elderly man in a tweed cap was slowly counting out dollar bills. A mother was shushing a fussy toddler. No one saw the crime in progress. No one saw the slow-motion violence happening behind a facade of loving family assistance. Marcus's fingers dug in deeper. A sharp, pointed pain and a small, pathetic whimper escaped my lips before I could clamp them shut. "Quiet," he hissed, through his own rigid, fake smile, his eyes as cold and dead as a winter lake. "We wouldn't want to cause a commotion, would we?" In that frozen moment, the final veil fell away. I saw him for what he was, a predator, and my granddaughter, my own Chloe, the little girl I had sung to sleep and bandaged skinned knees for, sat beside him, a willing accomplice in my destruction. This was the final bitter harvest of a lifetime of unconditional love. This terrifying moment in a sterile bank was the ultimate price for a love that knew no limits, for a heart that never learned to say no. My name is Eleanor Vance. I am 72 years old, and for almost all of those years, I was the family's rock, the grandmother who always had a spare key, a warm meal, and an open wallet. I was a fortress built on generosity, and they were here to storm the gates and claim the last treasure. I remember the day Chloe was born, a rainy Tuesday in October. She was so tiny, so perfect, with a shock of dark hair and her grandfather's mischievous smile. I held her in my arms, my heart swelling with a love so fierce it stole my breath, and I made a silent, sacred vow. I would move heaven and earth for this child. I would ensure her world was always safe and bright. I kept that promise for 34 years. I kept it so faithfully, I had nurtured my own undoing. At 6, it was the $300 dollhouse, the deluxe model with working lights, that Arthur and I scrimped and saved for months to buy. At 16, it was the $2,000 study abroad trip to France, paid for by me taking on extra seamstress work, my eyes straining late into the night. At 19, it was her calling at an elite design institute. A state college just doesn't have the connections, Nana. My future is at stake. The tuition was $45,000 a year, money we had to borrow against our retirement. I took in more mending and alterations than I could handle, my back aching from hunching over my sewing machine, all for that prestigious diploma. I wept with joy at her graduation. I truly believed my greatest work was done. I was so tragically naive. Then came Marcus, charming undeniably, but his smile never quite reached his eyes, which held a flat, assessing quality that made the hair on my arms stand up. The first question he ever asked me, the very first time Chloe brought him home for Sunday dinner, wasn't about Arthur's lovely garden or my cooking. It was, "This is a great neighborhood. Properties on this street must be worth a fortune now, huh?" A warning bell clanged so loudly in my soul it was a wonder they didn't hear it, but I was too dazzled by my granddaughter's apparent happiness to pay it any mind. Their wedding cost $60,000. "It's the most important day of my life, Nana. It has to be absolutely perfect." How could I refuse? How could I tell her Arthur's heart was getting weaker, that his new medications were a financial drain I was struggling to keep up with? I took out a personal loan. The wedding was a fairy tale. Chloe was a vision, and Marcus's eyes were constantly scanning the room, appraising the guests, a human calculator disguised in a tuxedo. The requests for help started before the wedding. Thank you notes were even in the mail. "Nana, the plumbing in our apartment is a disaster." "Nana, Marcus's car just died and he needs it for work." It was always an emergency, always a crisis that only my checkbook could solve. $500 here, $1,000 there. Drops in a bucket that was slowly, inexorably being drained dry. 2 years into their marriage, they announced they were buying a condo. "It's an investment in our future, Nana, a place to start a family." The price was astronomical. They needed $50,000 for the down payment. They had no savings, naturally. Their credit was a mess, predictably. "Can you help us, Nana? Just this once. We'll pay you back every single penny, with interest." It was the biggest, most beautiful lie she ever told me. I went to the bank alone that day, too. I sat across from a different, younger bank manager who looked at me with pity in his eyes as he explained the severe penalties for an early withdrawal from my IRA. A 10% penalty, $5,000 I would simply lose for the privilege of accessing my own money. "Mrs. Vance, "Are you absolutely certain about this?" he'd asked, his voice filled with genuine concern. "Once this is done, there's no going back." I told him I was sure. It was for my granddaughter. It was for her future. It was for giving her the stability I prayed would make her happy. I signed those papers with a hand that shook only slightly, and I walked to their cramped apartment and handed Chloe the cashier's check, feeling like a hero. I was saving the day. I was making her dream come true. She had cried then, too. Tears of joy, I was certain. "You're the best Nana in the entire world," she'd sobbed, throwing her arms around me. "I promise you, I swear on everything, I will pay you back every last cent." Marcus had seemed genuinely moved as well, though his hug felt stiff, perfunctory. "Thanks, Ellie, we won't forget this." They moved into the gleaming new condo 3 months later. It was beautiful, I had to admit. High ceilings, stainless steel appliances, a balcony with a city view. She gave me a grand tour, and I walked through each room, my heart swelling with a pride that now feels foolish and tainted. My sacrifice had borne fruit. My granddaughter had her perfect life. But the calls didn't stop. They became more frequent, more audacious. "Nana, we need furniture. We can't just have empty rooms." $10,000. "Nana, the homeowners association fees are much higher than we anticipated." $3,000. "Nana, we want to renovate the master bathroom. It's so dated." $8,000. Every time I hesitated, every time I murmured that I had my own bills, that my fixed income wasn't limitless, Chloe knew exactly which buttons to push. "Nana, I thought you'd be happy for us. I thought you'd want your great-grandson to have a beautiful home." And just like that, my great-grandson, Leo, the sweet, bright-eyed boy who was the new light of my life, became her ultimate, unassailable weapon. If you're invested in my fight for survival, please let me know by leaving a comment below. Your feedback helps me, Leo. His name alone could soften the hardest parts of my heart. He was 6 years old with his mother's dark, expressive eyes and a laugh that sounded like pure, tinkling bells. From the moment I held him as a newborn, I knew he was special, different. He possessed an innate kindness that his parents seemed to have lost somewhere along their avaricious path. When Leo visited my little cottage, he would bring me treasures. A smooth gray stone, a carefully crafted drawing from school. My favorite was a crayon portrait where I was drawn as a giant with enormous, outstretched arms. "I made your arms big, Nana, because your hugs are the biggest in the whole world," he'd explain in his small, serious voice. In those moments, every sacrifice felt worth it. How could I possibly say no to anything that would bring light to that beautiful boy's face? And Chloe knew it. She wielded his happiness like a master swordsman. "Nana, Leo has so much talent in his junior soccer league. The advanced training program is only $300 a month." "Nana, his friend Oliver is having a destination birthday party. We can't let him be the only one left out. It's $1,500 for the flights." "Nana, he needs the new tablet for school. All the other kids have one." Each request was framed as a necessity for Leo's well-being, for his social standing, for his future. To deny him felt like I was personally failing him, clipping his wings before he could even learn to fly. The guilt was a constant gnawing companion. So I paid. I transferred the money. I watched my savings. The money Arthur had worked so tirelessly to leave me dwindle with every text message and tearful phone call. Meanwhile, my own world was shrinking, darkened by the shadows of their greed. Arthur's final illness had been a brutal, financially draining ordeal. The medical bills piled up like autumn leaves. Specialists, experimental medications, home care equipment that insurance stubbornly refused to cover. I sold his classic car, the pride and joy he'd spent years restoring. I quietly let go of the life insurance policy I'd held for decades, cashing it out for a fraction of its worth just to keep the debt collectors from our door. My sister, Beatrice, The only one who ever saw through Chloe's performances, would visit and shake her head in dismay. Eleanor, for God's sake, you've given that girl over $150,000 in the last decade. She drives a better car than you do. She lives in a penthouse. When is it enough? When you're living on the street? But I couldn't ask my granddaughter for help. That wasn't my role. My purpose was to be the strong one, the unshakable matriarch, the foundation upon which they could build their glamorous lives. I was the one who gave, never the one who received. Arthur passed away on a quiet Sunday morning, his hand in mine. I felt the life leave him, and with it, half of my own soul seemed to depart. We had been partners for 52 years. After his funeral, I sat in the profound silence of our home and did the math for the first time with clear, unsentimental eyes. I was broke. The medical expenses, combined with the river of money I had sent flowing to Chloe and Marcus, had washed nearly everything away. Arthur's small pension and my Social Security would cover the basics, but the $48,000 from his final life insurance policy was all I had left for emergencies, for the unknown future that stretched before me, a lonely and frightening road. I deposited it into a savings account, the passbook feeling heavy and sacred in my hands. I made a vow to myself, to Arthur's memory, no more. I will be smarter. I will be stronger. I will learn to say no. But Chloe had other plans. Just 4 months after we buried Arthur, Marcus was unfairly let go from his high finance job. It was political, Nana. Chloe wept on the phone. His boss had it in for him. Now the mortgage is due and we're going to lose the condo. Leo will have to change schools. He'll be devastated. They needed $20,000 just to stay afloat. 6 months tops. We'll pay you back the second Marcus lands a new job. I promise, Nana. On Leo's life. I promise. It was nearly half of what I had left. The number on the screen of my banking app seemed to pulse with a warning, but the image of Leo, confused and heartbroken, being uprooted from his home, his friends, his life, it was a pain I could not bear. The fortress of my resolve crumbled in an instant. I gave them the money. Marcus found a new, equally well-paying job just 2 months later. The repayment never came. When I tentatively, awkwardly brought it up, the excuses were ready, polished and delivered with an air of slight injury. We're catching up on back taxes, Nana. It was a nightmare. Leo needed braces. The orthodontist cost a fortune. You know how it is, just getting back on our feet. And I, the fool, nodded and accepted it. The pattern was too deeply ingrained, the fear of conflict, of losing them, too great, which is how I ended up here, in this plush leather chair at the Oakwood Trust, with my arm throbbing and my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. They weren't just asking for more now, they were taking it all, the final $30,000. They had lied to get me here. Chloe had called this morning, her voice a masterpiece of fabricated urgency. Nana, we need to go to the bank. There's a problem with your account, some paperwork you have to sign in person. It's very important. She never gave me details, just orders, expertly disguised as pleas. The bank manager, a kind-faced man in his 60s, named Mr. Davies, was walking toward our table. He had a gentle paternal demeanor and a warm smile. Is everything all right over here? Can I assist with anything? His presence was a spark in the overwhelming darkness of my panic. This was it. My only chance. My heart was beating so violently I felt lightheaded, sure I would faint. With a surge of adrenaline that felt like my last on earth, I quickly scribbled on the back of a deposit slip with my free hand, the pen scratching desperately. Help. Being forced. Don't want to sign. I folded the tiny note into a tight square and, as Chloe and Marcus were momentarily distracted, pointing at something on the document, I slid it across the polished tabletop to Mr. Davies. He picked it up with a polite, professional nod, as if it were another piece of routine paperwork. He discreetly opened it. I saw his eyes flicker down, then widen almost imperceptibly. His warm, professional expression shifted, hardened into one of controlled alarm. For a single, suspended moment that felt like an eternity, our eyes met. In that silent exchange, a message passed between us. I see you. I believe you. Without a word, he gave a slight, almost invisible nod and pressed a small, hidden button under the lip of his desk. The silent alarm. A wave of dizzying relief washed over me, so powerfully my shoulders sagged. Someone was coming. Someone was going to help me. But the battle was far from over. Mr. Davies returned to our table, his calm demeanor perfectly restored. My apologies for the interruption. I just need to verify a few details on this transaction before we can proceed. Bank policy for transfers of this nature. Marcus's head snapped up. I felt his grip on my arm tighten instinctively before he forced it to relax, aware of the watching eyes. What details? It's all perfectly straightforward. Mrs. Vance wishes to transfer her funds to her granddaughter's account. It's a family matter. I understand, sir, Mr. Davies replied, his voice a placid lake. However, our protocol requires me to personally verify that all parties are acting of their own free will and without any external pressure. He looked directly at me, his gaze steady and reassuring. Mrs. Vance, would you be so kind as to accompany me to my office for a quick, private word? It will only take a moment. Chloe immediately stiffened, her smile becoming brittle. That's really not necessary. My grandmother is very tired. She's already made her decision. We can complete everything right here. Her voice was sharp, the sweetness evaporating like mist. I'm afraid it's mandatory, ma'am, Mr. Davies said, his tone leaving no room for argument. He extended a hand toward me. It will only take a few minutes. I stood up, my legs trembling so badly I feared they would buckle. For the first time that entire horrific afternoon, Marcus was forced to release my arm, the spot where his fingers had been ached with a deep, throbbing pain. Chloe grabbed my other hand, her grip surprisingly strong. Nana, please, she whispered, her voice of venomous silk. Don't do this, don't embarrass us. Just sign the papers and we can all go home. Leo is waiting for us. She played her trump card. My beautiful Leo, using him as a human shield for her avarice. I'll be right back, I murmured, unable to meet her eyes. I knew if I saw the perfected mask of hurt and confusion she wore so well, my newfound fragile courage would shatter. I would fall back into the old, familiar pattern of surrender. Mr. Davies's office was a small, wood-paneled sanctuary. Family photos smiled from his desk. A healthy fern sat in the corner. He closed the door and the muffled sounds of the bank vanished, replaced by a profound ringing silence. He gestured for me to sit in a comfortable chair across from his desk. Mrs. Vance, he began, his voice now soft and filled with a genuine compassion that nearly broke me. Please, tell me what is truly happening. And so I did. The dam finally burst. The words tumbled out of me in a torrent, a lifetime of suppressed resentment, of quiet desperation, of love twisted into a tool for extortion. I told him about the college tuition, the wedding, the condo, the endless emergencies. I described the way Marcus's grip fell to my arm, the cold threat in his whisper. I confessed how Chloe used my love for Leo as a weapon, a psychological lever to pry open my wallet time and time again. I explained, my voice cracking, that this money was my final buffer against destitution, that without it, I had nothing. Mr. Davies listened, not as a banker, but as a human being. He didn't interrupt, only nodding occasionally, his face a canvas of growing understanding and anger on my behalf. When I finally finished, emotionally spent and trembling, he let out a long, slow breath. "Mrs. Vance," he said gently, "what you are describing is financial exploitation. In clear terms, it's elder abuse. What your family is doing to you is not just immoral, it is illegal." Illegal. The word landed in the quiet room with the force of a physical blow. All these years, I had framed it as my failure, my weakness, my inability to set boundaries. I had carried the shame. It had never occurred to me that their actions had a name, a classification, that I wasn't a bad grandmother, I was a victim. What can I do? My voice was a ragged whisper. She's my granddaughter. I don't want her to go to jail, but I can't. I have nothing left to give. First, Mr. Davies said, leaning forward, his elbows on his desk, we are canceling this transaction immediately. Second, I am documenting everything you have told me in an official incident report. Third, I am going to provide you with information for adult protective services and legal resources specifically for situations like this. He paused, his gaze holding mine with an intensity that was both stern and kind. But Mrs. Vance, the most critical step is yours to take. Are you ready to stand your ground? Are you prepared to say no and mean it, even if it means your granddaughter becomes angry, even if she threatens to cut you off? The question was a spear through a lifetime of conditioning. For 72 years, my identity, my worth, had been inextricably tied to being the provider, the problem solver, the endless well of support. If I stopped being that person, who was I? What value did I have? I thought of Arthur. I thought of the years of beans and rice we'd eaten to afford Chloe's fancy school. I thought of the dreams we'd deferred, the vacations we never took, the quiet struggles we endured, all for her. And then I thought of Leo, growing up in that environment, learning that love was transactional, that family was a resource to be mined until it was depleted. I looked Mr. Davies in the eye, a new steely resolve settling in my soul. "Yes," I said, and my voice, for the first time, did not shake. "I am ready." The family's true colors are revealed when their plan falls apart. If you're standing with Dottie, please show your support by leaving a comment. Your engagement helps this story reach others who might need to hear it. Mr. Davies gave me a small, approving nod and began typing on his computer, his fingers flying across the keyboard. "All right, Eleanor. May I call you Eleanor? We're going to start by placing a permanent alert on all your accounts. No transactions above a minimal amount will be permitted without your physical presence and a secondary verification that only you can provide. I'm also going to give you the direct number for a senior protection advocate I know personally." As he worked, I glanced through the slatted blinds of his office window. I could see them out there in the waiting area. Chloe was pacing, her phone pressed to her ear, her free hand gesticulating with sharp, angry jabs. Marcus remained seated, but I could see the tension in the set of his shoulders, the way his jaw was clenched tight. They knew the wind had changed. They knew their carefully laid plan was unraveling, and the predators were growing restless. For the first time in years, I didn't feel a pang of guilt at their distress. Instead, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't experienced in a very, very long time. Control, agency, the simple, profound power to say, "This is my line, and you will not cross it." Mr. Davies handed me several printed sheets and a business card. "This is a copy of our internal report. This is the advocate's number. And this," he said, tapping the card, "is my direct line. If they pressure you, threaten you, or show up unannounced at your home, you call me immediately." I took the papers, my hands now steady. What do I do now? How do I face them? "You tell them the truth," he said simply. that you have decided to retain your funds for your own security and living expenses. You do not need to justify, argue, defend, or explain. It is your money. You earned it. You saved it. You have every right to keep it. I took a deep, shuddering breath, filling my lungs with the resolve I needed. It was time to walk out of this sanctuary and back into the war zone. It was time to become Eleanor Vance, the woman who could say no. We exited the office together. Chloe immediately stopped her pacing and descended upon us, her face a tight mask of strained concern. "What was that all about, Nana? We've been waiting forever. We're going to be late." I looked at my granddaughter, this beautiful, sharp-edged woman I had helped create, and for the first time in 34 years, I spoke the words that would change the trajectory of our lives forever. "I'm not signing the papers, Chloe. I am not transferring my money." The silence that followed was thicker than the bank's vault door. Chloe stared at me as if I had just sprouted a second head, her green eyes wide with a mixture of shock and a dawning incandescent fury. Marcus shot up from his chair so fast it screeched against the polished floor, his hands balling into white-knuckled fists at his sides. "What did you just say?" Chloe's voice was low, trembling with the effort to keep it quiet. "I said, I'm not giving you the money. It's not a temporary transfer. It's my retirement, and I'm keeping it." Marcus took a threatening step forward, but the two security guards, who had been hovering nearby, subtly shifted their stance. He noticed and froze, the calculation clear in his eyes. "Eleanor, be reasonable," he said, the fake warmth in his voice now brittle. "What are you going to do with all that money? Sit in that dusty old cottage and count it? We can make it work for the whole family. We can invest it." "For the whole family," I repeated, and a dry, humorless laugh escaped me. It sounded foreign to my own ears. "Like you invested the $50,000 for your condo, or the $30,000 to cover your debts? Tell me, Marcus, what was the return on those investments for me?" I saw the mask slip completely. His eyes hardened into two chips of flint. "Those were gifts. You always said they were gifts." "I never, ever said that," I retorted, the words feeling like cleansing fire. "You promised to pay me back. You promised it was a loan. You promised a great many things you had no intention of ever fulfilling." Chloe began to cry. But these weren't the genuine tears of a child I'd comforted. These were performance tears, calculated and sharp, designed to wound me into submission. "Nana, I can't believe you're doing this to me. To us. After everything we've been through together. After all the love." "Love?" The word shot out of my mouth, sharp and cold. "You call it love when your husband hurts me? You call it love when you manipulate me into this bank under false pretenses to steal the last thing I own? Is that the love you're talking about, Chloe?" People were staring now. The mother with the toddler had stopped shushing her child and was watching us openly. The man in the tweed cap was frowning. Chloe saw the audience and lowered her voice, but the venom in it only intensified. "Fine," she hissed. "Don't give us all of it. Just half, just 20,000. That's all we need to get through this situation." "What situation, Chloe?" I asked, and I saw the question throw her. "You both have jobs. You live in a luxury condo. What is this mysterious, perpetual situation that always requires my money and never has a name?" She was silent, and in that silence, I saw the ugly, naked truth. There was no emergency. There was only entitlement. There was a lifestyle built on the foundation of my financial corpse, and they were furious that the corpse had finally decided to stand up and walk away. "What about Leo?" Marcus spat, playing his final desperate card. "What about your great-grandson? Are you going to let him suffer because his great-grandmother has become a selfish, paranoid old woman?" That word, selfish, had been a leash around my neck my entire life. But now, standing there, I realized the truth. Taking care of myself wasn't selfish. It was survival. Letting them destroy me wasn't love. it was self-annihilation. "Leo will be just fine," I said, my voice firm and clear, carrying across the now quiet bank. "You are his parents. You will provide for him with your own income, just like billions of responsible parents do all over the world. What you will not do is use my love for that boy as a weapon to bludgeon me into poverty." Mr. Davies cleared his throat. "Mr. and Mrs. Sterling, I'm going to have to ask you to leave now. Mrs. Vance has made her wishes clear, and to continue pressuring her on bank property constitutes harassment." "She's my grandmother," Chloe snapped, her composure finally shattering. "Not when you are actively intimidating her on bank premises," Mr. Davies replied with unshakable authority. He nodded to the security guards. "These gentlemen will see you out." Chloe looked at me with an expression I will carry to my grave. It wasn't sadness or disappointment. It was pure, undiluted hatred. "Fine, Nana, fine, if that's how you want it. But don't you dare come crying to us when you're all alone in that miserable house. Don't call when you fall and can't get up. Don't call when you're sick and confused. We are not your safety net anymore." "Don't worry," Marcus added, his voice dripping with contempt. "We won't be answering." Their words were designed to terrify me, to paint a picture of a future filled with isolation and helplessness. And for a moment, a chill of that fear did grip my heart. What if I did get sick? What if I did need help? But then I remembered something Arthur had told me once, watching a news story about con artists. "Ellie," he'd said, "fear is the manipulator's greatest weapon. They make you afraid of a future that will likely never happen, just to control your present." I looked at my granddaughter, the stranger I had created with my limitless giving. "I understand," I said, my voice calm. "If that is your choice, I accept it. But I will not change mine out of fear of a phantom future." The security guards moved in, a solid, imposing presence. "Folks, now," one of them said, his tone brooking no argument. Chloe snatched her designer handbag from the table. "This isn't over," she seethed, her voice low and venomous. "We'll discuss this at home, when you don't have these strangers filling your head with nonsense." "No," I said, and the word was final, an iron door slamming shut. "We will not be discussing this at home, not until you are ready to accept my decision without trying to bully me out of it." They left without a backward glance. Marcus, with a possessive hand on the small of Chloe's back, steering her away, whispering something that made her back grow rigid. I watched them through the window as they marched across the parking lot. Two figures receding from my life, taking with them decades of manipulation and emotional extortion. When they were gone from sight, my legs gave way and I sank heavily into one of the waiting area chairs. I wasn't trembling from fear anymore, but from the massive, seismic release of a lifetime of pent-up tension. I had done it. I had said no. Mr. Davies came and sat beside me. "How do you feel?" I thought about it before answering. "Terrified," I admitted, "and free. Like I can finally take a full breath after holding it for 30 years. The days that followed were among the most difficult of my life, not because I missed their constant presence, but because I had to confront the hollowed-out woman I had become. I sat in my quiet living room, surrounded by photos that now seemed to mock me, and asked myself the hard questions. When had I surrendered my voice? When had I stopped being Eleanor and become simply Nana, the human ATM? The phone calls started that very night. My landline rang every hour, Chloe's name flashing on the caller ID. I didn't answer. On the second day, the text messages began. "Nana, I know you're upset, but we need to talk. Nana, Leo is asking for you. He's so sad. Nana, Marcus feels awful if he hurt you. It was an accident. Each message was another needle of guilt, trying to deflate the newfound strength inside me. On the third day they came to my house, I saw them through the living room curtains. Chloe wearing the lavender dress she knew was my favorite, Marcus with his best fake conciliatory smile, and Leo standing between them, holding one of his drawings. My heart ached at the sight of him, a physical pain in my chest. But I did not open the door. Chloe rang the bell for 10 straight minutes, then started knocking. "Nana, I know you're in there. Your car is in the driveway. Please, we just want to talk." Her voice grew more and more desperate, more shrill. "Leo misses you. Look, he made you a new picture." I heard my great-grandson's small, confused voice. "Why won't Nana open the door? Mommy, is she mad at me?" The sound of that innocent question nearly shattered me. I almost ran to the door, almost fell back into the familiar, suffocating pattern. But I remembered Mr. Davies's words. Fear and guilt are their most powerful tools. I walked away from the window, retreated to my bedroom, and turned on the small radio Arthur had given me. I turned up the classical music until it drowned out the sound of their voices. After an hour, they left. That night, my sister Beatrice called. "Eleanor, Chloe told me what happened at the bank. She says you've become paranoid, that you think they're trying to rob you." Her voice had that familiar, condescending tone she used when she thought I was being irrational. "Is that what she told you?" I asked, the bitterness clear in my voice. "Did she also tell you that her husband left bruises on my arm, that I had to pass a secret note to the bank manager just to ask for help?" Beatrice was silent for a long moment. "He really hurt you?" "He really did, and Chloe watched him do it and did nothing to stop him." The words were becoming easier to say, each utterance making them more real, more valid. "Beatrice, they have taken over $150,000 from me in the last 10 years. They have never paid back a single penny, and they were trying to take the last $30,000 I have to my name." "But Eleanor," she said gently, "she's your granddaughter. Families help each other." "Families do help each other," I agreed. "But this isn't help. This is exploitation. There is a world of difference between giving a hand up and being treated as a personal treasury." After I hung up, I realized that even those who loved me didn't fully understand. They had seen the gifts, but not the coercion. They had seen the generosity, but not the psychological warfare. It was a lonely realization. My journey to reclaim my life is just beginning. Next, we'll see the aftermath, the unexpected allies, and whether a relationship built on lies can ever be repaired. If you're rooting for my freedom, please let us know with a comment or a like. Your support means the world. The silence in my little cottage was no longer empty. It was full of possibility. It had been 2 years since the standoff at the bank, 2 years since I had looked into my granddaughter's eyes and seen a stranger staring back. The pain of that loss was a deep, old ache, like the phantom throb of a removed limb, but the paralyzing fear was gone. In its place was a quiet, steady hum of freedom. I woke up in a room washed with the soft, golden light of a Tuscan morning. For a disorienting second, I didn't recognize the heavy wooden beams overhead or the scent of jasmine drifting through the open window. Then, the reality settled over me like a warm, comforting blanket. I was in Italy, alone. I had paid for this trip myself, with my own money, without asking for permission or forgiveness from anyone. The trip had been the audacious idea of my great-niece, Cara. She was the daughter of my nephew, a bright, compassionate young woman who had entered my life like a rescue boat after my ship had wrecked. "Aunt Eleanor," she'd said one evening over tea in my new garden, "you've spent 72 years living for other people. It's time to invest in yourself." She'd pulled out her laptop and shown me pictures of rolling hills, ancient stone villages, and markets bursting with color. "Wouldn't you like to see it with your own eyes?" At first, the idea was absurd. Women like me didn't travel alone to Europe. We stayed home. We saved. We worried. We waited for life to happen to us. But then I remembered a phrase from my support group. Your comfort zone is a beautiful place, but nothing ever grows there. So I booked the trip. I got my first passport. I bought a sturdy new suitcase and walked through my own front door into a wider world. And when Chloe found out, the phone call was a masterpiece of fury. You're spending your safety net on a vacation? She had shrieked. That money is for emergencies. What if you get sick over there? What if you fall? Chloe, I had replied, my voice calm as a mill pond. I have insurance. I have savings. And after a lifetime of responsibility, I deserve to spend some of my money on my own happiness. What about us? She had shot back, the old refrain. What if we have an emergency while you're off gallivanting? Then you will do what capable, resourceful adults do, I had said. You will handle it. I had hung up the phone, my hand steady, my heart quiet. And for the first time, I felt no guilt, only a profound, unshakable peace. Now, sitting on a small terrace overlooking a valley of cypress trees and vineyards, sipping the richest coffee I had ever tasted, I remembered that conversation and smiled. The air was warm, the sky was a perfect, untroubled blue, and I was exactly where I wanted to be. My phone buzzed. A flicker of the old anxiety sparked, the ghost of a feeling that it might be Chloe, fabricating some new crisis to shatter my peace. But it was Kara. Thinking of you. Is Tuscany as magical as it looks? Send photos. I sent her a picture of the view, the green hills stretching out to a hazy horizon. It's even better. I feel like I've been holding my breath my whole life and only just remembered how to exhale. Her reply was instant. That's not a new person, Aunt Eleanor. That's the real you, finally getting some air. Her words stayed with me as I walked into the little village later that morning. The cobblestone streets, the chatter in a language I didn't understand, the sheer, unapologetic beauty of it all. It was a balm to a soul I hadn't realized was so bruised. For the first time, I was making memories that belonged only to me. They weren't tainted by obligation or shadowed by resentment. I had spent a lifetime believing my value was in what I could provide for others. Without that, I thought I was nothing. But in the quiet of the Tuscan hills, I discovered I was someone who loved the way the light fell on old stone. I was someone who could enjoy a conversation with a stranger in a cafe, using gestures and smiles. I was someone who could sit in perfect contentment, alone with a book and a glass of local wine, and feel utterly, completely whole. The transformation hadn't happened overnight. In the months after the bank, the support group had been my anchor. I met Eleanor, a woman of 75 who had been through a nearly identical ordeal, with a son addicted to drugs. We became unlikely friends, and together we signed up for a watercolor class at the community center. I discovered, to my utter astonishment, that I had a talent for capturing light on paper, a talent that had been buried for decades under a mountain of other people's problems. I also started volunteering at a local women's shelter. There, I met women of all ages who were, like me, learning to rebuild after the devastation of toxic relationships. The work was heart-wrenching, but it was also deeply, profoundly gratifying. For the first time, I was helping from a place of strength and empathy, not from a place of codependency and fear. I was giving because I chose to, not because I was manipulated into it. And my finances? They were healthier than they had been in 20 years. Without the constant financial drain of Chloe and Marcus's emergencies, I had been able to create a real budget, a genuine emergency fund. I had even spoken with a financial advisor, a kind, patient woman who treated me with respect and invested a portion of my savings. The money Arthur had left me was no longer a dwindling resource to be guarded in terror. It was a tool to build a life I actually wanted to live. As I was browsing a market stall, selecting sun-ripened tomatoes and fresh basil for my dinner, my phone rang with an unknown number. Curiosity overcoming caution, I answered. "Mrs. Vance? It's Mr. Davies from Oakwood Trust. I hope you don't mind the intrusion. Your great niece, Kara, gave me your number. I have some news I thought you should hear." My breath hitched. "News?" "Chloe and Marcus came into the bank last week," he said, his tone carefully neutral. "They tried to access a joint savings account you have with them, an account they didn't realize we had flagged after the incident." I was confused. "A joint account? It seems that about 3 years ago, when you were caring for your late husband, Chloe helped you organize your affairs. She had you add her name to one of your savings accounts for convenience. Do you recall?" A vague, hazy memory surfaced. A stack of papers. A stressful time. Chloe's reassuring voice. "It's just a precaution, Nana, in case you ever need me to help you with a bill." I had signed without really reading, trusting her completely. "That account had $12,000 in it, Mrs. Vance," Mr. Davies continued. "They attempted to withdraw the entire sum. Our system blocked the transaction and alerted me. When I informed them they could not access the funds without your explicit, in-person authorization, they became quite agitated. We had to involve security. 12,000 more dollars. Money I had forgotten existed. Money they had been sitting on, waiting for the right moment to take. The day at the bank had not been their first attempt. It had been their most brazen." "What did you do?" I asked, my voice soft. "We removed all other names from the account and transferred the full balance to your private savings. The money is secure." After I hung up, I sat on a small bench in the village square, the sun warm on my face. $12,000. It felt like found money, a final gift from my past self, rescued from the clutches of my past life. I could use it for more art supplies. I could donate it to the shelter. I could plan another trip. The choice was mine, and mine alone. That evening, my last in Tuscany, I opened the journal Kara had given me. I wrote by the light of a single lamp, the words flowing easily. "Today, I understand that I do not need permission to live. I do not need to justify my joy or apologize for taking up space. I spent 72 years paying for love with my savings, my time, and my soul. I have discovered that true love is priceless, and more importantly, I have learned to love the woman I am when I am free." I closed the journal and looked out at the stars, brighter here than they ever were at home. This wasn't about revenge. It was about reclamation. It was about liberation. 1 year later. The doorbell chimed. I set down my paintbrush, wiping my hands on a cloth. Through the front window of my new, smaller cottage, the one I'd chosen for me, filled with my own art and light, I saw a tall, slender figure standing on my porch. It was a young woman. For a heart-stopping second, I thought it was Chloe. But no, this was someone else. She had the same dark hair, the same familiar green eyes, but there was a nervous, hopeful sincerity in her smile that Chloe had lost long ago. I opened the door. "Hi, Nana," she said. Her voice was different, deeper, more her own. "Can I come in?" It was my great-grandson Leo, but he wasn't the little boy I remembered. He was 13 now, all long limbs and a quiet intensity that reminded me so much of Arthur. I let him in, my heart a wild drum in my chest. "Leo, how did you find me?" "Aunt Beatrice told me," he said, sitting on my sofa as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "My parents don't know I'm here. I told them I was at a friend's." He looked around, taking in the paintings on the walls, the easel by the window, the general sense of a life being lived. "It's nice here." "Thank you, Leo." I sat across from him. "What's going on?" He took a deep breath, his young face suddenly looking much older. "Nana, I need to ask you something, and I want you to tell me the truth." His green eyes, so like his mother's, held mine with a startling directness. "Is it true that Mom and Dad tried to steal your money? At the bank?" The question landed like a physical blow. I had rehearsed for this moment for years, but now that it was here, all my prepared words vanished. Who told you that? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. No one told me, he said, his gaze unwavering. But I've been listening. For years. I've heard the fights, the phone calls, the things they say when they think I'm not there. He paused and his composure cracked just a little. And I found the letters, the ones you wrote me. Mom had them hidden in a box in her closet. My letters. I had written one every month for 2 years, telling him I loved him, that our separation was not his fault, that I was always here. I never knew if they reached him. What did the letters say, Leo? They said you loved me, he said, his voice thick. They said you missed me. They said you hoped we could see each other again. A single tear traced a path down his cheek. Why did she lie to me, Nana? Why did she tell me you didn't want to see us anymore? I reached out and took his hand. It was so much bigger than the last time I'd held it. Leo, I began, choosing my words with more care than I ever had before. Your mom and I, we had very serious problems, grown-up problems about money and trust. But is it true? He pressed, needing the bedrock of truth after years of shifting sand. Did they try to take your money? I looked into the eyes of this brave, beautiful young man who had sought out the truth for himself, and I made a decision. He deserved honesty. Yes, Leo, I said softly. It's true. He nodded slowly as if I had just confirmed a secret he'd always known. That's why you moved. That's why you stopped giving us things. How does that make you feel? I asked. He thought for a long moment. Sad, he finally admitted, and confused, because I love my mom and dad, but I know what they did was wrong. He looked at me, his expression full of a pain no child should ever have to carry. And it makes me sad that you've been alone. I haven't been alone, Leo, I said, and it was the absolute truth. I told him about my painting, my friends, my trip to Italy. I showed him the landscape I was working on, and his face lit up with genuine interest. Nana, he said after a while, I want you to know something. When I'm older, when I can make my own decisions, I want us to have a relationship, a real one. Not like before. What do you mean, not like before? Before, he said with a wisdom that broke my heart. When I visited, it always felt weird. Like Mom wanted me to ask you for something, or the whole visit had a secret purpose. I just want to visit you. For you. We hugged for a long time, and in that embrace, I felt the first real untainted hope for the future I had felt in years. He stayed for 2 hours. We walked in my garden. We baked cookies. He told me about school, his friends, his dreams. When it was time for him to leave, he gave me another tight hug at the door. Nana? Yes, my love? Can you keep writing me letters? You can send them to my friend Jake's house. He'll get them to me. I promised him I would, my heart so full it felt it might burst. I watched him pedal away on his bicycle, a young man navigating a complicated world, armed now with a piece of his own history. That night, I sat in my garden as the fireflies began their evening dance. I opened my journal to a fresh page. Today, my great-grandson found me, not the manipulated child from my memories, but a courageous young man in search of the truth. In him, I see proof that real love can endure lies, that authentic connection can be forged even after the most profound betrayal. The past is a place of reference, not residence. My future, for the first time, feels full of light. I am Eleanor Vance. I am 74 years old, and my life, my true life, has just begun. This concludes my story. My journey from victim to victor was made possible by courage, support, and the difficult decision to choose myself. If my story resonated with you, or if you know someone who needs to hear it, please share it. And if you'd like to share your own thoughts, we'd be honored to read them in the comments below. Thank you for walking this path with me.